today, what I recognized was there was a post this morning from treasury.gov. It was an overview of the PPP program. So that's the Paycheck Protection Program. And it's one of the loans that are going to be forgivable through this COVID crisis. The PPP loan is one that you're going to go to your bank and receive. If you remember, as Louis outlined just today, there's a second loan called the EIDL loan. Those are going straight to the Small Business Authority, right? Am I got that right?
Administration.
Administration, thank you. All these A words, Small Business Administration, and doing the loan through them. This is the PPP loan. It's probably the one that we're going to have the most access to as entrepreneurs, and you're going to probably have to use your existing bank relationship to get there. As we were saying earlier, Chase seems to be the most proactive in this process. I'm getting a lot of documents from Chase for my clients that are banking with Chase. The other banks don't seem to be as as proactive in producing those documents, but the overall thought process is the same from bank to bank. Most of it looks like you're going to be applying online to do it. So there'll be a link to your the bank website. There'll probably be an online loan application. There seems to be a published loan out there that people are looking at, a loan document I'm looking at, and I'm going to post this right now into the chat, this loan document, because I think this is pretty interesting to look at what the requirements are going to be and the certifications or the declarations you have to make as a business owner that have to be kind of true about you and what you're using the money towards. So that clarity for me to read that to be very helpful. But let's go back to what inspired this topic today. It's actually from a treasury.gov info sheet that I also just posted into the chat here. And it's right there at the very beginning. It says the loan amounts will be forgiven as long as, and then point number 1, the loan proceeds are used to cover payroll costs, most mortgage interest, rent, and utility costs. And then here's the key point I want to highlight: over the 8-week period after the loan is made. To me, that's the beginning of understanding what this money is and how to start utilizing that money. For clarity, the first thing I hear in that statement is that the thought that you should retain current employees and you will be compensated for money you've already spent, it doesn't say that. It says from the moment you receive the loan, from that point forward, those 8 weeks forward, you can cover your payroll. So I think that's a really important distinction for people as they work out the strategy of what to currently do to cash flow their business, to know what that specific part of it. And I know it's an important part. Maybe we should highlight that also. But for me, it kind of reads into the thought of this PPP program is to help you move forward once the loan is distributed. So it really is a stimulus program. It's a thought of moving the element forward, moving your project forward, moving your company forward from that moment on. And so right now, I feel like you have 2 responsibilities: to keep yourself in business and sustained. And then when getting the PPP loan, know who is going to be on board, what resources you need to make projects happen, and then bring those people on as soon as possible and move forward with your business. That 8-week infusion is a 2 month of basically, for most people, half their cash flow needs or half their burn rate. That's probably going to be a great infusion of cash. It's not 100%, but it's a good 50%. So that's what's inspired this topic for me today.
So Tim, let's net it out real quick. So if I'm hearing you correctly, this is really a stimulus or support going forward for 8 weeks. So if my creative firm, if I secure this loan, it's going to benefit me for the 2 months following, but it's not a remedy for what has happened.
That's
and right. I guess my question is, what if I laid off people in the past few weeks? How does that impact this going forward? Do I now have the funds to bring them back? Do I have to bring them back? Do I, what are those decision points?
Yeah, I was on a conference call yesterday with the lawyers that basically the lawyers for the banks. So the banks are calling this law firm to find out how to interpret the current law. And the way that they were interpreting, encouraging people to think of it was this: the federal government currently is infusing the unemployment insurance policies and adding $600 more to each benefactor. So they recognize now that people are unemployed, and that's where they want people to go, is to the unemployment. And then this stimulus package does exactly what you said, Joel. You will receive the loan amount, and that loan is to help you cover from that point forward. And the hope is, I think, that it gets people back to work. So while people, from now until that point, if someone is laid off, they should be sustaining themselves through the unemployment insurance. And then at that point, come back to work and move forward. Now, if your business is busy and you need those resources, and this is, the cash flow conversations we've been having, you obviously want to retain that talent. That's been a long-term investment for you. And you don't want to just kind of let people go willy-nilly. But we'll say, like, the business responsibility you have is to sustain your business with current revenue. So spend less than you make. Still has to be a policy getting through these next few weeks until we know a deadline for, the shelter in place restrictions that we have, the opportunities to get back to work, new revenue coming in from clients, and a loan program like the PPP getting you back to work.
Yeah, it's Marcel, I'm kind of curious to hear from you. I can't help it. Again, I don't want to look a gifted horse in the mouth, but I can't help but think that there got to be quite a few business owners that look at this and say, 8 weeks? I mean, okay, obviously, if you have $1 million payroll that you pay out every 2 weeks, we're talking about a huge sum of money. But 8 weeks, I mean, Tim, most cash flow reports that we build go out 12 weeks. So this isn't even going to impact my business much beyond that. It might get me through the 8 weeks, but for the amount of potential paperwork, red tape, what am I promising to do? What are the gotchas, the pitfalls? Am I opening myself up to be audited, or open myself up to some liability or lawsuit if I don't play by the rules? These are some of the questions that are running through my mind. I'm curious, Marcel, if this is part of what you're processing, because this is something that could benefit you, but on the other hand, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And in my head, I'm navigating in this 12 weeks plus 8 weeks. I think the way I would see this loan, it's actually like pushing my 12 weeks forward and try to get the 8 weeks in here. So I go back to that idea of, like, what do we want from this, right? What in my, business side, I'm like, what can we get from the loan and from the incentive is actually like stretching ourselves as much as we can, like, can I stay in business longer? And I love what Tim said yesterday about government is not going to back us, bail us out again with $2 trillion unless they're printing money, but man, there's no way. So to me, it's like, how do we use the resources and actually, like, stretch this a little more? Because again, we're dealing with the problem now, but I am seeing a problem in 6 months, not now. I think it's like the aftermath, based on so many different factors that we would have, not only the economy, but also like how people are going to feel about it. Probably some people, the anxiety levels are going to be higher and all that stuff, even like with markets. So in my head is like, how can I get this 8 weeks sort of like bailout and use the most out of it so that I can stretch those 12 weeks that you guys project on your cash flow and, live with that a little longer. That's where my mind as a business owner will go.
Yeah, and Marcel, I think I mentioned this a few days ago, but I have a client that works in the live production space. They do rock concerts and large events. And one of the items they're coming across is that really truly like logistics. There's so many venues and arenas available to handle sporting events, concerts, and what have you. And that backlog that is taking place really shows like the limit of the resources or limit of pipeline that's available to actually get new entertainment out there or new content out there. That scenario is going to play itself out for all of us, right? On the other side of this, when we're in recovery, let's say, it's not like the pipeline is going to be 100 times bigger. It's going to be the same size pipeline it was 5 weeks ago going into it. So the hope that we can basically backfill like twice as much work when we finally open up, it's not true. Most likely we're going to get it to 100% capacity, but we're not going to get to 200% or 300% to make up for a loss. So the thought process right now is to how do we get through this time period that we could lower our loss or take no loss in the current time. And then when we get up to capacity, back up to 100%, we'll be operating at that level. But there's not super high margins going to come in the future to make up for those losses.
Okay, here's what I'm wondering. So when I put my owner hat on, if I'm pretend I'm running my old company, it would be very easy for me if I was a lazy thinker, which at times I'll admit I've been. It would be very easy for me to think, okay, cool, here's some money from the government that's going to enable me to basically fund the majority of my operation for the next 8 weeks. And it's either completely or partially forgivable. Wow, that's cool. So status quo is kind of like, I'm good for 8 weeks. Then I just need to figure out and fill my sales pipeline beyond that. Now, I want you to tell me why that thinking is actually not necessarily smart, because we know sales doesn't solve all problems. And I think the larger question is to this idea of moving forward after we get this money, this stimulus, what then? So how do we start getting a sense of there's a new normal coming and not just say, okay, I've got to hunker down, kind of get through this and maintain the status quo. And then in 3 months from now, everything will be back to normal. Because I know this, it won't be back to normal. My gut, I've learned this, I've been through this 3 times and I just know it won't be back to normal.
It's a new normal probably, right? I feel like it's, and again, this is our ability to use the tools that we know to adapt to the new normal, right? So for example, I'm seeing this, and Tim, please tell me that I'm wrong. I'm seeing this as a Band-Aid. It's like a little Band-Aid only. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people have been relying on that, and again, it's something that we can rely, but it's not too much. I don't think this is the salvation of the whole thing. It's just like a little help so you can keep going. I don't know where your head is at, Tim.
Yeah, like for me, the clarity is like, you think about just a vacation, right? Where you can be away from your office for a couple of weeks, but when you return, it's really normal. Like the operations of things, the sales pipeline might be a little bit slower because you didn't focus on it for a couple of weeks, and production might be a little soft. So when you get back to work, you have to retune the machine. The difference between you going on vacation and the world continuing is one thing. In reality, like while you're on vacation, everyone else stopped too. So we have a backlog of projects. We have outreach that didn't happen. We have dropped revenue from our clients and other sources. So your ability to generate new sales and pull those projects in will be affected in this process. And then you have really what you've lost as part of your business. So the employees you might have lost or revenue you might have lost. And the reason why we focus on cash flow so much to give people long-term creative advice or long-term business advice. And it feels like it's so myopic cash flow because it focuses on a short period, but really it's a series of constant decisions we're making on a week by week basis. When we reset cash flow and start over and have to rebuild everything, those decisions are then all backlogged. There are new resources or different resources going to be available to you. You might have lost some freelancers who are no way ever going to be freelancer again. They're going to go staff somewhere. All of this, every single element within your business has a possibility of shifting. And for me, I think that's why Joel always say, like, you don't want to be a lazy thinker. You actually want to think through the basics of the entrepreneurial formula. Needs plus resources equals solution, and start processing the needs and the new needs. Start understanding the resources and the available resources to you now and possibly in the future. And then really put the effort and have the vision of putting those pieces together to do what you do for a living, to satisfy what your company's vision and mission is all about.
Yeah, that's a good point that you're making, because some people might hear a cash flow report. Who cares about just looking at the numbers for the next 8 to 12 weeks? It might seem myopic. But really the idea is it's more like we're putting in place a pattern. It's what I often call this: how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that if you look at this thing every week, you may only go out 12 weeks, or some people go out 16 or more, but that over time, you're just doing those routines and that ritual of every week, where are we going? And we're constantly making these small investments that over time add up to a lot. And now we can afford this resource, or we're slowly carrying back this expense, and we're now saving here, what have you.
Yeah, and I feel like the companies that might be at highest risk are almost the opposite of what we would think. The companies at highest risk might be the companies that have millions of dollars in a pipeline and are used to bringing on a $300,000 or $500,000 film project or commercial project, and you're used to those large pieces coming in. And you look out on your cash flow and you say, well, look, I have a few $100,000 in my bank account. I know that there's other long-term projects or retained work out there. I think they're at most risk is because if any of those projects fall, they lose a lot of money with one decision, right? So you have small decision points and big impact. Or if that money gets pushed, just move $400,000 30 days or 60 days. All of a sudden you realize how fast your cash flow and burn rate is, right? What that payroll burn rate really is about. And you obviously are not going to lay people off for a 30-day gap, but that's a pretty heavy burn for large companies. But also lastly is the sales cycle. What it takes to get one of those projects back online. If it takes 3 or 4 or 5 months to win one of those projects, land them in and start pre-visualizing, pitching them, all that process, none of that's happening right now. Those pitch phases, the design phases, they also aren't happening. So all of that is delayed along the way.
So let me drop one quick tip, because Tim, you and I have not mentioned this, and Marcel, I know you'll find this relevant too. And then we do have a few questions we should get to before our half hour is up. But Tim, how common is it that when we are working with a client and they have this big checking account balance, and it's their operating account, right, that they make payroll out of and they pay their various ongoing expenses, and they look out 12 weeks and they say, oh, I've still got $280,000. And then we say, yeah, but look, you've burned through 100,000. Going from 380 to 280, it still feels like a lot of money, but really you're going out of business. It's just further into the future. So one encouragement we often say is, whatever that cash reserve is that you need, set it aside and have it on a different line so that you maintain an operating account that in a sense keeps you strong and healthy. You can't go for 2 weeks or 4 weeks negative without thinking, uh-oh, maybe I won't make payroll without dipping into my cash reserve. Yeah,
Marcel knows this thing. We did this when we did state, right? Remember that, Marcel, when I was like, we're going to move this away, and the thought was like, it shifts your thinking all of a sudden. That bottom line becomes a lot more narrow when you're only dealing with the operating revenue and operating cash instead of having this larger cash reserve behind it. It kind of changes your thinking.
Yeah, that's true. And when you see that number, it creates like a sense of urgency on everyone. It's like, hey, now we need to get going. Now we need to like talk to people, do sales and everything. You don't want to sit on the cash too and just be like, oh, that's fine. We're going to lose $100,000 here, but that's okay. No, it's not okay. Just make sure that you don't have that in there. But Tim, I keep asking you this question. And so is there like a right answer on which kind of loan is, relevant to each kind of situation or each company? Because there are like 2 to 3 different ones, right? And I've seen people like struggling deciding which one should go. Even like Nate Howard has a question here about the if he files for BPP, can he go to the economic disaster loan? So I know that there are still different rules, but which one is right for which company? Is this like a case to case? So you have to analyze and see which one is best? Because yesterday, even Louis was trying to like understand which one was better, and he didn't have an answer. I don't know if you had time to digest that and come up with an answer.
Yeah, so the decision of which one is best, you just have to play at the factors of what's the benefit of each type of loan. So the 2 big ones that I'm looking at are the EIDL loan and the PPP loan. And so the greatest distinction between the two is that the EIDL loan is happening through the SBA. So imagine one pipeline with a bunch of people waiting in line. I think that program has more flexibility on what you can use the money for, and it has an immediate infusion. If you get online, that it seems to be offering, we'll wait and see, but seems to be offering an immediate $10,000 today inside of the EDL program. And the qualifications for that is very low to get that current $10,000. So that immediate push from the EIDL is great. The PPP loans are happening through the banks. So now you have a larger pipeline for distribution for the PPP, and it's electronic distribution to you. So that money will come sooner, it appears, sooner than the EIDL larger loans will come in. But here's the way I've read the pieces, and what Louis was saying yesterday is that if you went through the EIDL process, you can do it today. We're not waiting for that to come online. The economic disaster relief is available usually through disaster. So it's already an existing pipeline. It might be overwhelmed by all the requests right now, but it is currently in place. And if you were to receive money from the EIDL and then later on qualify for a PPP loan, you can fold your EIDL loan into your PPP loan. And I think that's the distinction. Like, you can have both, in that one rolls into the other. What you can't do is use both loans to pay for the same expense. So if you're using money from the PPP for payroll and that's forgiven, you won't be forgiven money from the EDIL loan, right? Did I say EDIL? Yeah. You won't have that money available for payroll also. So the money forgiven through the PPP, you would have to find other expenses to have it forgiven through the EIDL, or you would carry the EIDL loan balance it as a long-term 10-year 4% loan that you could, it's just basically a loan. It's a reworking of capital. You can obviously also just take the money if you didn't use it and pay off the EIDL loan. There are no payment penalties. So there is a strategy to say, why don't you go right now for EIDL, begin that process, and if you qualify, get that money in. And then when PPP comes available, work with your banker, get that money in, and use the PPP to pay the EIDL. So now you have only one loan, and then have that loan forgiven. That's the way people seem to be talking about stacking the strategy. So I know that's a long explanation, but I think that's how the two pieces go together if you are thinking about doing both. I believe most people will be satisfied by just doing the PPP and taking care of their payroll for 8 weeks. That seems to be the greatest forgiven benefit. And that's the forgiven basically means free money. And that's most of what we're looking for is money we don't own interest. It's not a loan, it'll be forgiven. So in that case, that's the difference. Oh, I just see that somebody posted the differences there too. Yeah, so again, like educate yourself, do some homework and figure out a strategy for you, but that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, Tim, I found this handy little PDF from this pretty substantial law firm, key differences between PPP and EIDL. So everyone can open that up and take a look. But I think, Marcel, did you have one more or a follow-up question that you wanted to ask or from someone in the group here?
No, it was a question from Colin that he's asking if does having a Chase credit card count as a being Chase customer? I really don't know that answer.
No, it is Chase business
checking accounts, right?
It's a Chase business account. So you have to have an already existing Chase business account to make it happen. A Chase credit card is not a business account. And I'm like Colin, I'm at Wells Fargo. They definitely don't seem to have their act together right now. It took me forever just to find information on their website. They're still like having like an old man and an old lady, like, open your savings account kind of photos on their home site. It's totally ridiculous. If anyone has Wells Fargo as a client or wants a client, they should reach out to Wells Fargo and have them to get their act together.
So Tim, let's ask this question on behalf of Richard. He was saying, can you clarify forgivable? Is this stimulus basically free money if the applicant is accepted?
Yeah, so the money will come to you with the condition that you're going to use it for qualified expenses. And any money you use towards those qualified expenses will be forgiven. Like that, it will be reduced from the balance and not have to pay it. If you use your money on items that are not qualified, then there are other repercussions to it. One might be you have to pay it back. So I didn't use it for that. Here's the balance, leave me alone. But if you read the document that I posted earlier, Joel, which is the loan application and the certification process. There are obviously ways and clarity of you're not going to use it for things beyond this or it's fraud. So you have to be really clear on what your strategy is, what the payments are, how you use it, and how you expect to pay it back if it's not used. But forgivable is forgivable. Like it's going to be, you won't owe anything to the bank. But I also say this, it's also a non-recourse loan, which means if for some reason you go out of business, the federal government has it insured for the bank, and they will pay the bank for the loan if you go bankrupt on the other side of this. So a few of us are going to be in that condition because you guys are rev thinkers and you're listening to this channel. So you're going to play it smart and make it past this process. But in the case of that, it's no personal guarantees, no assets, leverage, and backed by the federal government insured. So it's non-recourse. They can't come after anything else that you own.
Yeah. All right, well, we're at our half-hour point, so we should wrap it up. I do see a question here from Ozzy that hopefully we can get to this one tomorrow. Tim, any thoughts, parting thoughts, or from, and then hand it over to Marcel. I'm definitely starting to think about where this is going to go in our conversation for tomorrow.
Yeah, I just got a text from a friend of mine that he said, so there's a bank here in Oregon, I think other states have it, US Bank. It says, US Bank says that, so he's a contact at US Bank that said Friday or so, the SBA will give final guidelines. So we are all kind of waiting for those final guidelines so the banks know what to do with it. It seems like in this case, he believes that it's based on a 12-month average of your salary. And you don't have to be a customer of US Bank in order to get a loan from them. So those are open up. That's some information just opened up right now. I honestly just got this text. A lot of this will be electronic distribution of funds and banks that have this, or I'm going to expect they're going to be brokers out there. So make sure you do shop around. Like if you have a bank working relationship, that's great. It's supposed to be 2% to the bank, 4% to user, or no more than 4% in user. So there's a little bit of give and take there, a couple of percentage points that might make a difference to you. And I promise you all those, those things you get on in Google when you search all those credit card companies and whatever, they're going to be in the game and brokering this stuff out. So make sure you're smart about this, educate yourself, be as proactive as possible. Look at the documents we've given you so you have things prepared with information so you can fill out these applications and be ready for it. And then let's use it properly. And my goal is, again, like, let's move you forward. I want you to be thinking, not now with what you're working with today, but I want you to be thinking about what to do in June, July, August, September, October, and how we're going to come out of this cycle so that you're in a strong position.
Marcel, any last thought?
Yeah, no, lots of homework to do. I encourage people, if Tim, if you can share that PDF again on the comments, please, and then everyone should take a look, access that information. My 2 cents here: work with your CPA. If you're here, you're like business owner like me. I'm on the creative side, so work with your consultants, your CPA, put everyone together, define what's best for you, and yeah, lots of homework. Let's get going.
And then Jason, I want to say thanks for you shot this in the comments to us panelists that there is a webinar that Chase is holding tomorrow at 4. So we'll try and track down that info and share that inside of the 7 Ingredients Slack group. Okay, cool. You just said you're going to email me. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we're 3 minutes over, but hopefully this conversation's been helpful. As you know, Tim and I are here to help, and feel free to schedule a briefing with us. If you need info on that, just DM us in Slack. And Marcel, as always, man, I appreciate getting your perspective here. So thanks to both you and Tim.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, keep up the good work out there. Thank you all for watching and trusting us in this process. We love you and are encouraged by all you're doing.
All right, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.